Mr. Keefe came on board quite a bit after that, and he was in a finance role and not in an administrative role. So I just think you should, as supervisors, be aware of what happened.
Okay.
Thank you. And I would like to speak during the rezone request later on too.
All right. Anyone else for public comment? Okay. All right, then, moving on to number 10, zoning committee. Mr. Buckholtz, and then I'll go with Jay.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. The zoning committee will hold its monthly public meeting tomorrow morning at 8:30. The committee continues to see above average requests for potential rezones and conditional use permits. Land use and sanitary permits in zoning department are at their springtime highs at only slightly behind permit numbers for the same year last year. We have one combined rezone case tonight, and if there's no other additional questions, I'll turn it over to Jay, Mr. Chairman.
Sure. Okay, Jay, thank you.
All right. Good evening, County Board Supervisors. For those that are new here, my name is Jay Kozlowski, Sawyer County Zoning and Conservation Administrator. All rezone petitions are legislative acts that require approval of the full county board. These rezone cases are specifically to address the designation of a different zoning district. Furthermore, as part of this legislative act, rezones themselves cannot be tied with specific conditions. That is to say, if someone was to request a rezone for commercial, this board cannot say that you can only put storage buildings on it. It would be permitted for any allowed use within the zoning ordinance for any type of that commercial use. So with that introduction, I'll read into the record the rezone request we have for you this evening, as well as my staff report for the case. This is for the rezone case 22-003 and 22-004, owner Pinewood Property LLC. In the town of Bass Lake, it is the part north one half of section 4, parcel 0029400422108. It is 73.18 total acres zoned agricultural 1 and commercial 1. This is located off of Fun Valley Road. In the town of Hayward, it is the part of the northwest one quarter, the southwest one quarter, northwest quarter of the southeast quarter, southwest quarter of the southeast quarter, and southeast of the southeast. Parcel 0010941334107. It is 87.89 total acres zoned agricultural 1. This staff report and discussion action is a combined request for both of the rezones. It makes sense to hold them in conjunction, and that county board ratification of the zone district change would be needed for both in order for this request to move forward. The reason they were initially set up as the two cases is they are much larger in nature properties, and they are split between two separate towns. For those that are unaware, this property consists of the old Hayward National Golf Course. The golf course has been out of operation for approximately 9 years. The majority of the existing trees on the property have already been removed, and the likelihood of this ever being converted back into a golf course would be very difficult, as the greens and fairways have gone to seed, and you would need to completely reconstruct this area. The purpose of the request is to rezone all the agricultural 1 upland area, excluding the commercial of 5.5 acres. That would leave approximately 118.39 acres to be rezoned to residential recreational 2. The purpose of the request to residential recreational 2 is then to operate a 197 unit RV park. All these sites would be located southeast of Spring Lake Creek, leaving a buffer of existing golf course holes around the perimeter of the property. The commercial 1 portion is excluded from the request, and it includes that existing lodge area. The nearest RR2 residential recreational 2 zone property in relation to this is a 17.36 acre parcel immediately adjacent to the southwest. There are several other smaller lots that are zoned RR2, as this would not be viewed as spot zoning. Even though the property is currently zoned Ag 1, agricultural 1, according to NRCS, the Web Soil Survey, NRCS does not see this as prime agricultural farmlands or farmlands of statewide importance. Very severe limitations that greatly reduce the choice of plants that could be placed there. Previous requests for this type of campground operation have occurred twice in the last 2 years. In those previous requests for rezones and conditional use permits, they were withdrawn before going to zoning committee, as there had been a deed restriction document from an adjacent property owner that if the restriction, with the restriction in place, that this land could not be anything else other than a golf course unless that deed restriction was removed. That deed restriction has since been removed by Mr. Robert Gershbach, and you may have received documentation that stated that they were denied in the past. That is false information. The conditional use permit requests were heard last month at the zoning committee public hearing. It was approved at a vote of 3-2. This conditional use permit, CUP, included 22 unique conditions to be placed on the property, which the owner has agreed to. This board and comments you may hear tonight for those in attendance should specifically be addressing the rezone designation. One of those conditions as laid out in the CUP is for final rezone ratification. The actual parameters of RV park were discussed in that CUP process. The town of Bass Lake shows this area as future land use as park and recreation in their town's comprehensive plan. The comp plan is a local government's guide to community, physical, social, and economic development. Comp plans are not meant to serve as land use regulations in themselves, but instead they provide a rational basis for local land use decisions, future planning, and community decisions. Per the town comp plan of Bass Lake, they indicate this future land use area as parks and recreation land, which does include privately owned lands, which may include golf courses, campgrounds, marinas, and shooting ranges. Per the town of Hayward's comprehensive plan, they show this future land use as recreational commercial. The primary intent of this classification is to identify areas which provide private recreational activities through a commercial business or fraternal organization. As mapped and designated, this may include hunting and fishing in sports clubs, campgrounds, golf courses, and other recreational facilities. The town of Hayward Town Board approved the request February 8th. The town of Bass Lake Town Board approved the request on February 14th. Both were supported with multiple findings of fact, the largest contributing factor being that the rezone would be consistent with the town comprehensive plan. There were 51 opinion letters sent out to property owners within 300 feet in the town of Bass Lake and town of Hayward. There were also multiple letters that were submitted to those outside of 300 feet. This entire packet of responses was sent to the zoning committee members for review. They acknowledged that they read these transcriptions and therefore were incorporated into the record. At the public hearing meeting that lasted over 2 hours and hearing testimony and the contentiousness of the nature of the request, it was voted then on March 18, 2022 as a recommendation to county board of a vote of 3-2 with the findings of facts that it would not destroy prime agricultural lands and that it is consistent with the town comprehensive plan. A petition protest was filed approximately 28 hours ago for the proposed zone district amendment. It was ascertained and I thought authenticated by myself that over 50% of the total perimeter area to be affected has a signed petition that was filed with the clerk. Therefore, Wisconsin statutes 5969 sub 5 sub E sub 5G will now require a 3/4 vote or supermajority vote of the board members present and voting in order to enact and ratify the proposed rezone. If there's any other questions, I can certainly attempt to answer them. Otherwise, I'm sure there are multiple people here that want to make comments. Again, this board and comments you hear should specifically be addressing the rezone. However, the rezone request is then tied to a 197 unit RV park. Without adoption of the zone district change, the CUP could not move forward and the property would remain agricultural 1.
Okay, thank you, Jay. Okay, I think we'll go right in then to the public comment that's involving the rezone, and we'll start with Mr. Bernard. State your name, please, sir, your address, and you have 3 minutes. Thank you.
My name is Gerald Bernard. I live on the 3rd green at the golf course. First of all,
Your address, sir?
15915 West Jenny Lane.
Thank you.
I've had good disclosure on this proposal and I have no problems. I can see directly from you. I know that's just a comment, but my main reason for being here is I have a sprinkler system in my yard. And it doesn't seem like it's very important, but it might be very, very important to the owners or to the whole project. I cannot answer that. But for the last 5 years, I've had the irrigation people come over to my house every year, 3 to 4 times, because we have no water pressure. And it has nothing to do with depth, because I've already checked that out. It's got to do with a couple things. Evidently, where I am on the third green, when I have my sprinkler on for more than an hour and a half, you might say it starts like this and it goes right down almost to nothing. That tells me there might be a water problem. And I'm addressing that only because it should be a concern. The other thing is I was told, and that happened deer season when I had 9 people at my house and my water turned off, just turned off totally. The piping coming up from the well got full of mud. And I was told again by the people who cleared it by going down and cleaning it out, that the water in that area is very full of mud and that type of thing, which will cause problems. So I'm only wondering if somebody is, and if they have taken care of it, then I have no concern. But if we're going to have 179 people tapping into the water and I'm having a problem, maybe it's something that should be considered. And I have no more to say because I've been treated fairly.
Thank you, Mr. Bernard.
You're welcome.
Okay, Carol LeBrecq. Hope I'm saying that right. Carol LeBrecq. Name, address,
Hi.
3 minutes, ma'am. Yep, thank you.
My name is Carol LeBrecq. I live at 9782 North Fairway Drive. My husband and I have lived on Hayward National Golf Course for 10 years. We, like the rest of the people there, have spent thousands of dollars and countless hours improving our property. Once again, we are here to defend our right to privacy and safety and home equity. We were told at the zoning board meeting that there wasn't any evidence of a campground that would affect the value of our property. This is contrary to what we were told 2 years ago when the same proposal was made. My husband and I enlisted an established, reputable realtor to determine the value of our property. He told us we would lose 20 to 30% of our equity. It's very disturbing to think that a handful of elected people take it upon themselves to choose who and where our neighbors will be. We chose to live on the golf course specifically because of location and assurance it would remain as such. We should not have to spend $600 to $800 on an appraisal to prove this. Common sense is proof enough. This will indeed affect everyone's real estate around and near the golf course. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Amanda, okay. All right, Guy Houston, please.
Hello, my name is Guy Houston. I live at 15873 West Sunshine Acres Lane. Jay was up here and he was talking about the comprehensive plans for Hayward and Bass Lake. Those were drawn up in 2015 and 2018. And within the last couple of years in this neighborhood around where this proposed campground is going to go, there's been 10 new homes within the last 2 years. The comprehensive plan that was drawn up in 2015, 2018 is totally different. The demographics are totally different than what they are today. We talk about the depreciation of the value of our home. I mean, I just like to use like common sense. I mean, if I had a house by the campground and another person had a house, say on Anderson Road, and they were both identical. One was on the campground, one was in, a quieter place maybe. I mean, which would sell first? The one on Anderson Road would sell first. Well, what does that mean? Does the house that's on the campground, is that worth less money than the one that's on Anderson Road? I mean, isn't that an example of depreciation of your home? Having a huge campground of like 500 people, it affects the lives of the people that live around there. It affects your lifestyle. Campgrounds are noisy. They're loud. There's lights. There's cars coming in and out all the time. There's smoke issues. I mean, 200 campground sites and campfires. The other day I was standing in my yard and my neighbor had a fire going and I'm looking at it and the smoke's billowing up in the air. I'm like, that's a lot of smoke. And then I thought, wow, if there was like 100 of these campfires, I mean, that'd really be a lot of smoke. And these are the things that affect us being homeowners around there. I mean, there's like 50 homes around there. There's a couple other things that I'd like to bring up also. There's some unanswered questions about this proposal. I mean, how do we ensure that the aquifer underneath doesn't get contaminated? Running through this campground is Spring Creek, which feeds into Spring Lake, and then the Namakaget. And these are three of the most protected waterways in Wisconsin. All of these bodies of waters are protected, and once we contaminate them, we'll have a huge mess on our hands. How about the owners that are proposing this campground? Adam and Steve Bodenschatz. Have they been fully vetted? What do we know about them? I mean, they have a campground on the flowage.
Okay, you gotta wrap it up, Mr. Houston.
Okay.
Please.
They have Cisco's campground. I mean, has there been any problems there? Has there been any questionable things that have happened there? What about the partners that are going to be with them? I'll stop there. Thank you for your time.
Yep, thank you, sir. Okay, Dale Buckholtz.
My name is Dale Buckholtz. I live on 11292 West Blueberry Avenue, not exactly near the campground, but I live near a campground on Blueberry Lake, and I enjoy living. Fortunately, I've been blessed to live on a checkerboard reservation as a non-native and can see the impact of fishing on the flowage and Blueberry Lake. I'd like to just remind the council here, Mr. Chairman and the board, that for every camper, there's a boat. And just think of the impact that has on our fisheries and the impact that most cities within or towns in Sawyer County are not 197 people. In fact, if it's 197 people and they're married or have a spouse, that doubles. And if they have kids, that's even more. And I'd like the council to look at what is the impact to our emergency services, fire, medical, ambulance. So just something to think of before we put a town, we're gonna build town is what we're gonna have. Make sure we have the proper resources at hand to handle the public needs. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Okay, that's all the requests I have to speak. Is there anyone that maybe missed the opportunity to fill out a slip?
Could I speak?
Oh, yep, just
Yes.
a minute. Okay, go ahead, sir. Come to the mic, state your name and address, please. And we have somebody online. Okay.
Hold on, they're gonna, what are you doing? There's somebody's gonna speak.
Hello, and thank you for meeting with us tonight. My name is Adam Bodenschatz, 9948N Wood Creek Lane, Hayward, Wisconsin. As you all may or may not know, my father and I do own Pinewood Properties LLC, and we are here to discuss the rezone of the Hayward National Golf Course. The purpose of our request, as has been stated, is to convert the golf course from Ag 1 to RR2, and so that it fits within the county zoning ordinances for a campground use. A couple of points I'd like to make on why we think this is the highest and best use for the property with RR2 zoning. The only reason that it is zoned currently Ag 1 is because that is what's required for a golf course. It is no longer a golf course for 8+ years, and it's for sale or available for that long, and the market has stated that there's really no interest in it being a golf course. As Mr. Kozlowski has pointed out in his staff report, both townships' comprehensive plans label this site as having a future use consistent with campgrounds, RV parks, and that requires an RR2 zoning designation. The surrounding parcels are also zoned either RR1 or RR2, which my neighbor to the west has 16+ acres. I think Mr. Kozlowski said 17. That is already RR2. And then there's a commercial one just across the highway. Our request falls within the surrounding designations and will not be spot zoning. Number three, we have gone through 5 different public hearings already to get, and with all being approved for a rezone in these 5 other meetings. That's 5, not 3 like the majority of other applicants in just a single township. We did our research and studied the town's plans before we submitted any applications. We studied the comprehensive plans. We came up with a plan that clearly fits in both township comprehensive plans. We didn't just pull this one out of our hats and asking for something way out of whack. We truly believe that Hayward needs another high-quality vacation destination to serve the guests of our tourist-based economy. And the residential Recreation 2 zoning is required for these types of properties. With that said, and with both townships approvals, zoning's approval, we ask the board approve this rezone request. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Okay, who do we have online, Mike? Oh, that's it.
Could Ellen Domas, could I
Okay, we'll
speak?
go with Ellen.
Yep.
Ellen?
Yes.
Online, please. Please state your
Yeah.
name and address for us.
My name is Ellen Domas. My address is 16025 West Park Road here in Hayward. And I just have a couple of things I'd like to state that if this truly is going to be passed by the board, what I would like to know is when we went to the zoning meeting, the county zoning meeting, I feel it didn't give us enough time or consideration to the CUP that was being applied for, that the considerations that we brought up and that, of course, the owners of Hayward National Golf Course brought up, it's like it just didn't even seem like we were even given enough chance to explain why, as homeowners and people that live on the boundaries of the golf course, need a little more protection from a potential 400 new people surrounding our neighborhoods. You know, we just want to help kind of keep our neighborhoods and to protect them and keep them quiet and truly be a neighborhood as we bought into the neighborhood. The other thing is if this is going to be passed by the county board supervisors, I would hope, and if not, we will challenge this, taxes will have to be reevaluated on every single one of our home values because they will be greatly decreased, meaning your tax base will go down because we will not let this stop. A campground truly devaluizes every homeowner's property that surrounds this golf course. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. All right, next we'll go with Jacob Gondik. Jacob?
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yep, speak up, please.
Yeah, so my name is Jacob Gondik. I'm an attorney here out of Superior. I work in a firm at 1215 Belknap Street, Superior, Wisconsin, 54880. I represent many of the adjoining landowners here, and as Jay pointed out, we have filed a petition in this action for a protest petition under WSStat 59.69 sub 5 sub E sub 5G. Ultimately, as Jay pointed out, this is an authentic request requiring a supermajority, a 3/4 vote. This is in place because we got over 50% of the surrounding property owners to perimeter to sign and agree to this petition. Nobody was forced to do it. People are doing it because they don't agree with what is being proposed. This should not be taken lightly as obviously the public policy behind this statute and that the legislature has created is because landowners and adjoining landowners have rights. They have property rights. They have rights for all sorts of different reasons. They have legitimate concerns. Some of them we've just heard in this short amount of time are potential concerns for water pressure, obviously property values decreasing at a rapid rate, environmental concerns. And at the end of the day, I would imagine the public policy behind what the legislature's created is merely to avoid a public nuisance. That's what this campground creates. It will, without a doubt, in anybody's mind who's sitting there, who doesn't like smoke, crazy amount of noise, intoxicated people, and everything that comes along with a campground, people have rights to their quiet use and enjoyment of their personal property. And that's ultimately why people have signed this protest. Why drastically more than 50%. And that's just the individuals that are, easily obtainable as far as being able to contact, to get replies, maybe people that aren't snowbirds, that aren't, out of state. These are people that were easy to contact and get to sign. You can only imagine that there's more people that are in disagreement with this. We have to take people's property rights into consideration, and I strongly ask the board to decline this request to rezone, as it's merely going to be a nuisance for the surrounding landowners.
Okay, thank you, Jacob. All right, are there any other, oh, yeah. Linda Zelmer, name, address, please. You wanted to speak on this?
Yes, thank you. Linda Zilmer, Edgewater property owner, 902 Holly Hill Lane, Birchwood, Wisconsin. I do appreciate Jay pointing out that in that earlier email that I sent to you all today, I did say that this request had been denied in the past. It was very difficult for me to try and search what the actual action was. So I will take it that the previous applications had been withdrawn. But my email to the county board tonight listed some other procedural matters that I think have legal consequences. One of the things that the zoning administrator read to you was the rezone, and what he read to you was not what was publicly noticed. What was publicly noticed for the March hearing where the zoning committee took action, and it was a new attorney present and not the one that I see online. It excluded what was considered commercial, and it excluded acres of wetland. In one of the towns, the acreage was small, but in the other town, it was over 30 acres. So what the action of the zoning committee was leaves pockets of Ag 1 surrounded by RR2. Also, it was I appreciate how complex it was that the zoning committee had to consider the 2 rezones and then the 2 conditional use permits. But in the rezone discussion, there was no presentation of what the sanitary sewer system would be or the water source. So there was no determination made. And so I think people that spoke tonight made very valid points. I do not believe that the 3-2 close decision to approve included all the factors that should have been considered. And so just to add those comments to the ones that have already been made. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right. Anything else, Mike? No? Okay, Jay, you want to come forward then to the podium, please? Discussion, possible action. If you want to run us through that, please, sir. And what is a super majority? That's a 3/4 vote?
Yeah, with 15 board member supervisors here present, I would assume no one's recusing themselves. If you are, make it known so I can calculate, but on a super majority, in order to enact the proposal, which is to approve the rezone, you would need 12 voting members in favor. Ultimately, someone's gonna have to make a motion either
So we
for
can,
or
this is
against,
for, and we'll do both these resolutions together in one approval.
I think that would,
So the resolution to rezone number 22-003 and resolution number 22-004. Mr. Betcher.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I move to approve the rezone request 22003 and 22004.
Okay, I've got a motion by Mr. Betcher. Mr. Helwig.
Second that motion.
Okay. And a second by Mr. Helwig. Motion by Mr. Betcher, second by Mr. Helwig to approve the resolution rezones number 22-003 and number 22-004. Is there any further discussion? Mr. Duffy.
Can I ask Jay, will this land perk out there? What's the aquifer situation? How low is the land and?
yeah,
is it on-
we had heard from the applicant at the time of the zoning committee meeting that he had Butterfield Inc. go out there and do some preliminary soil testing, that it would perk or through a soil morphology test be suitable for conventional sewer systems. That being said, though, there is a pretty high groundwater table. The groundwater table is about 7 feet below ground. Per the DSPS, Department of Safety and Professional Services, they require a 3-foot vertical separation from the bottom of a system to a limiting factor being groundwater saturated soils. So you generally would have a drain field or, some type of bed system for a sewer system, at least 1 foot underground, and then you would still need another 1 foot of the system type, and then 3 feet of vertical separation. So they're making it by about 2 feet, which does meet the DSPS code.
Okay. Yes, Mr. Helwig.
Question for Jay. So a gentleman brought up that his water, his pressure is very low. How would that affect that place, that property, and would this?
That was also brought
High
up zoning
water
committee. Unfortunately, I do not have the best answer for that. I am not a hydrologist. I don't understand the movement of groundwater as best as some others may. I mean, that is a very large aquifer, and even, a couple wells that would be for campers. I don't think you would see a drop in the aquifer. If there's a pressure issue, like I said, I mean, that groundwater table is 7 feet below grade. If there's a pressure issue, it may be in the pressure tank situation.
Okay. Okay, Ms. Hessel.
I was just going to say that we need to reiterate that we base our opinion, our voting on facts, not feelings, and also not on hypotheticals. And so what we've been presented in all of these meetings are facts.
Thank you. Mr. Betcher.
So important decisions like this, me personally, I try to remove as much emotion as possible before I make the decision. And I have read every single opinion letter, every word of them, and their opinions. They're full of a lot of conjecture and hyperbole and some false facts. And there's a lot of emotion in those letters. So it doesn't mean that I don't care, but I still have to, in making these decisions, I just try to look at the facts. And the facts are, this was recommended for approval by both town boards. It fits in the comprehensive plans of both town boards. Mr. Bodenschatz has in fact done his due diligence above and beyond, agreeing to comply with 22 different conditions. As far as the property values, I've done my own research on this, and it depends on which website you go to and what realtor you talk to or appraiser. Some say it drops significantly, others say it doesn't drop at all. I've read some websites that say, it can go up. It's like owning a pool, what it does for your property value. If the buyer wants a pool, then it'll go up. If somebody wants to live closer to an RV park, then it's not going to hurt the value. And keep in mind, we are a tourism-based county, and there has been a higher demand for tourist locations, especially since COVID pandemic. And so what I don't want to do is push away the lifeblood of our county, our tourists that come here. So just before we vote, I just hope that people base their vote on facts and not opinions. Thank you.
Mr. Schluter.
Yeah, Jay, is this going to be probably not separate wells for every campsite, but community wells?
I don't know that answer. I would assume you wouldn't have a separate well for each individual site. You'll most likely have blocks, and that you'll have 3-4 different wells, and they'll run water lines in between those for the site designations.
Okay. The septics, one septic per
Most
site?
likely not. You'll probably have several different systems. Again, I mean, it's 197 unit, and the maps are included as part of your packet as to how that layout is done. But with that type of scenario, you would probably have multiple systems. And we heard from the applicant during the zoning committee, this would be several phases, is a 3-phase project. The first phase, I believe, was 3 to 5 years, and then starting the subsequent phases after that. So that's where you would have the additional sewer systems, additional wells when you start developing additional sites.
Okay, thank you. my last question is, comprehensive plans, are they absolute? You cannot change them?
No, they're a guide.
They are a guide.
They're a guide.
Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Helwig?
There was a gal up earlier that said that, they moved to the area because it was a golf course. That one there, that's kind of a hard one. It's kind of a stickler because, a lot of properties change. As far as you can never expect an area to stay the same forever. And as Mr. Betcher said, this county is all about tourism. And I think that we have to kind of look through the clouds, and that would be all the people with the emotions and everything, to the sunshine. And the sunshine, in my eyes, would be the economic impact. And that is a big, big deal for this county.
Thank you. Okay. Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Bissonnette.
Thank you, Chair. So how many residents were sent out letters within 300 feet?
51 was my last count.
And what was the opposition?
I didn't bring that packet, but the overwhelming majority was in opposition.
Well, the reason I bring that back, it goes back to when I was on the zoning committee many, many terms ago. And, I understand the findings of fact that the zoning committee has. I'm not disputing that, let me see if I can find what the findings of fact were.
For zoning committee, they claimed that it was not destroying prime agricultural farmland by taking something that is agricultural and removing it,
Right.
and also that it's consistent with the town comprehensive plan.
Okay, so from my recollection, some of the findings of facts that have to be taken considered also are aesthetics. And so, I believe these people are right that live right there, and now all of a sudden, it goes back to what Mr. Hughes has said, common sense. Your property value is gonna go down because the aesthetics of the property went down. So I think that should have been considered as a finding of fact. And it seems to me that the noise issues being brought up, now whether that happens or not, but is it a nuisance to the adjoining property owners? I think they have a valid argument that it is. So I just wanted to get your comments on validating what I'm saying is finding of facts. Aesthetics should have been considered.
Right. And not to appear that I'm for or against this, because I really have no dog in the fight. But those types of findings of facts were more carefully laid out during the conditional use permit process of the zoning committee's determination, where in the specific conditional use permits, that is where they instilled unique conditions to basically mitigate some of those issues. There's a larger setback distance for the actual campsites that was implemented as opposed to what the general zoning ordinance would have. General zoning ordinance would require now a 75-foot setback from adjacent property lines for a campsite designation. This one was implemented in specific areas, 300 feet, 200 feet. There is a couple that are right at the, I believe, 75 to 100-foot setback, but that was one of the things that was discussed in length at the zoning committee.
Okay, so I have a question. Why do we even ask for communities or neighbors' input if in fact we're just gonna go by what these planning committees are saying this is how it should be zoned?
Simple answer, state statutes. But ultimately, those comments are read into record. And if those comments have substantial evidence, they would be used to either support a position or deny a position.
But I almost get the impression that if we got all the neighbors around the golf course here that are in opposition to it, why are we even listening to their opposition? Because if we're gonna have to follow what we're mandated under the zoning regulations, it's like,
Zoning committee is mandated by certain statutes and how they have to render their decision, but you as county board supervisors necessarily aren't under that umbrella. You're, as a political county board supervisors can vote how you see fit. There are certain elements you should look at when making a decision, but again, it's your own decision as an elected official.
Okay, and Jay, what were the town boards were both unanimous?
They were.
Is that correct? There was-
I shouldn't say that because I don't know.
Okay,
In the responses that we get back, they sign their town letters. They all had their signatures on them. But I don't ask for a vote at the town levels as to 4-1, 3-2. Hayward, I believe, only has a 3-member board, but they both did pass. They both were approved.
sure. And I think I asked you earlier, what supervisor districts does this rezone involve? Did you say 3? And
Yeah, District 8 and District 3.
okay, and that's Supervisor Savitsky, correct? Do you have any comments, sir, from your area?
Yeah, I've been involved with Town of Bass Lake since 2019 or 2018, I believe. And this topic has been brought up multiple times. And the thing is now the property is purchased. We've had multiple people try to come in and buy it and start a campground, but the boning shops have gone through all the meetings and the hassle of proposing all this to people and boards. In Town of Bass Lake, we approved it 5-0. So we knew that we had more businesses fail in the past or leave the area, or in Bass Lake specifically, in the past 5 years and what have been brought to the area. So we were actually kind of happy to see a campground come in, or any kind of business really come in and want to take a piece of property that sat vacant for I think 7 years. So our thoughts were, we want our families to be able to have, our children to have jobs in the future and help the Hayward area grow. So we were in favor of it, as you can tell from our voting at Bass Lake. But since 2019, there's been other options. Other people could have bought it. People around the neighborhood could have bought it and done something with it. Nothing happened. And there could be worse things that could go in there, like a CAFO, or things that could affect the groundwater and such. That could be worse than a campground that needs to be addressed, because the property is not contingent. It is purchased and the boning shops own it now. Something worse could go in besides a campground.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate that. Is there anyone else that hasn't spoke yet that would like to speak? Okay, Mr. Buckholtz.
Listening to the residents that live around this campground and hearing what they have to say, and they're a taxpayer of Sawyer County. I believe with Brian that should mean a lot to this zoning or board of supervisors. You go by what the towns do. Yes, we usually abide by that. And the comprehensive plan, well, they're old. They have not been updated. So these people, we need to listen to them more than what we're doing tonight.
Mr. Peters, please.
I noticed that there is a considerable buffer area in certain areas around the campsites. But I guess one concern I have, is there any protection for adjacent landowners from the people who are going to be using that particular area? For example, are they just going to be potentially wandering over to adjacent landowners to pick up wood or something like that? And is there a sharp demarcation between adjacent landowners and this property, so that those kinds of irritations don't develop?
And I know I should have grabbed the list of conditions that has the 22 unique ones tied to it. Ultimately, if someone goes on someone else's property, they're trespassing. I do believe one of the conditions for approval of the cup was that a survey would be delivered prior to the site layout as to identify the exact location of them. Right now, we have a map form, which we've accepted as the proposal layout, but that a survey would also be accompanied with that. Furthermore, with the actual setback distances, at least the town of Haywards, which I believe did make it into the conditions, is a vegetated buffer zone. So it's basically an area that they will continue to not mow or maintain and let natural vegetation come back to those areas.
Okay, thank you, Jay. I'm gonna go back to Ms. Hessel then, if none of you want to speak. You okay? All right, Ms. Hessel.
Okay, a couple of things. We did approve a similar campground on Highway 77 this fall. We did toughen up our ordinance for the county for all campgrounds, RV or tent camping. So we did work on that diligently this fall, and it is secure with lighting, with sound. There's a lot of things that we took into consideration locally and by the state. Jay was doing a great job with that. The third thing is if we could ask Sheriff Morotek to come up and explain if they get a lot of calls, if there's a lot of, I've been told by the Sheriff's Department that there are not a lot of theft or violent acts or calls to the Sheriff's Department. I'm wondering if he can address that or if that's not appropriate.
Sheriff, you want to address that, please?
Well, I kind of got blindsided here, so I'm not prepared
I'm
to
sorry.
do research. I can't give you details, so speaking would be off the top here, so
Thank you.
Okay,
yes.
we're not gonna put you on the spot. Thank you, Sheriff. All right, Mr. Helwig.
Just
Nobody
a couple
else? You
things.
good?
How many homeowners are in the, say, general vicinity of the property? And also, would you recall if sound barrier is one of the 21 factors?
Yeah, as far as close proximity, I guess I would default to the 300-foot zone that we used to send out the petition letters. That was 51 properties. Are there a plethora of more that are 302 feet away? Yes, and it expands from there. As far as the noise issue, one of the conditions was for quiet hours. I can't remember exactly. I know I should have brought that condition list. Again, we really shouldn't be talking about the conditions as part of a cup when you're talking about a rezone ratification. But I believe it was either the quiet hours are 11 to 8, 11 to 7, something like that. Your standard quiet hours that you'd see in most campgrounds. Outside of that, the Sheriff's Department does have a nuisance ordinance as far as a decibel level over a certain amount. But again, if those conditions are to be violated, if people are hooting and hollering at midnight, having a good time, those are potential grounds for revocation of the cup.
Okay, thank you, Jay. Mr. Betcher.
Yeah, I just want to say that I'm afraid that if this doesn't pass, it's going to set a really bad precedent that it's going to be hard to pass any future RV campground rezone requests in the future. Because there's probably not a plot of land in the county, private land, that is not going to have some opinions from the neighbors that don't want it. It doesn't mean that people are against RVs in general or campgrounds. They just don't want them in their backyard. And I understand that. But if we start denying these, then we're going to have no more campgrounds, and that's going to reduce the number of tourists. So if you move to a tourist town in a tourist county, and then you don't want tourists, then you might want to rethink that So I just think it's a bad precedent if this does not pass. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so we have a motion by Mr. Betcher, second by Mr. Helwig to approve the resolution rezone number 22-003 and the resolution rezone number 22-004. And correct, Jay, we need a 3/4 vote, so that'd be 12 votes. And we will do a roll call vote if there's no further discussion. If not, Madam Clerk, roll call vote, please.
Ed Peters,
No.
Ron Buckholtz,
No.
Ron Kinsley. John Righeimer,
Yes.
Chris Rusk,
Yes.
Michael Maestri,
I'm too new to vote on this. I don't have the knowledge. I don't feel comfortable. I think both sides are right. And can I, with,
Well, really, sir, you've listened to all the discussion and I should have got your abstention before the discussion.
fair enough.
So I need you to vote, sir.
Yes.
Brian Biznet,
No.
Michael Savitsky,
Yes.
Tom Duffy,
Yes.
Mark Helwig,
Yes.
Jason Weaver,
No.
Stacy Hassel,
Yes.
Tweed Schuman,
No.
Jesse Betcher,
Yes.
Dale Schleter.
No.
What do you got, Madam Clerk?
8 yes. 7 no.
Okay, so motion fails. All right, number 11, Public Safety Committee Chair Report, Mr. Buckholtz.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. First of all, the courthouse model update, I'll leave with for Mr. Keefe when he does his. Sheriff's
Mr. Chair?
Department report. Oh,
Can I wait until I can hear?
Oh,
yeah,
sure.
I'll wait.
Did we have any interjection from our legal counsel on that?
Not that I'm aware, no.
I don't know if it's appropriate for me to speak up right now or not, so I'll just leave it at that, but we
No,
certainly.
no, it's not.
Okay.
It's not, sir.
Our council.
Yeah, correct, our counsel.
That's correct. This is
Okay,
Andy
number
Phillips. No.
11, Public Safety Committee Chair Report, please.
Okay, thank you. Like I said, the courthouse remodel update, I'll leave for Mr. Keefe in his report. Sheriff's Department report, Sheriff Morotek advised that Animal Control Officer Sherry Shelton retired in March and recognized her for 30 years of service. And that woman did an exceptional job at what she did. The Communication Center report, Chief Sedera reported they still are having a vacancy in the dispatch center and another resignation is pending. Patrol report was provided. Chief Sedera reported that the city of Hayward will be hosting a 2022 Northwoods Tech Enforcement Management Conference at Flat Creek. The jail report review provided by Lieutenant Johnson advising that the number of increasing again, and we are currently housing 16 people in Barron County. Coroner's report, Mr. Fremel advised that they do not have descendants, or they do have descendants without family, thus the county is responsible for all the after-death costs. He is working on an MOU with Hayward Funeral Home for this purpose. Emergency Management Department written reports from Mr. Dunstan have been working with Jump River due to ice storm and will now require approximately $95,000 from the state. He is working on an emergency management plan for the airport. LifeQuest is still on the integration process. Criminal Justice Coordinating Council, Lieutenant Johnson reported at Justice Point working out of the jail to provide services. That ends my report.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Buckholtz. Any question, Mr. Helwig?
Um, uh, Mr. Buckles,
Yes.
do you know who can go to that conference?
What's that?
That conference is gonna be at the,
Who's going?
who can?
Well, the sheriff here
Just
yet.
like- Is it just for law enforcement?
Anybody can go to that, right? I mean, it's all the law enforcement around the area. But, can like the public go?
Or is it just for law enforcement?
It was an administrative law enforcement conference that's done annually, used to be hosted in Superior. And we were blessed to be able to host it here. And it is open to all law enforcement administration and supervisors in all the different divisions. And it is passed already, so.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Sheriff.
All right. All right, number 12, Public Works Committee Chair Report, Mr. Kinsley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The maintenance department has our veterans down now at the Oasis building. There's still some more work to do down there, but they do have that done. As far as having them down there, the highway department is busy closing out the end of the year. I think they have that done. There's still openings for highway department employees who drive and truck. So they're always looking for applicants for that. And at the airport, they're almost finished remodeling the terminal building. With that, we have letter B, airport boundary survey, exhibit A. This is to bring our maps up current, and they need to be approved to get us back in compliance.
Okay, so then at this time, I would entertain a motion then to approve the resolution approving Sawyer County Exhibit A Airport Property Map. Mr. Helwig,
I would make that motion.
thank you.
What you
Mr.
just said.
Peters.
I'll second.
Motion by Mr. Helwig, second by Mr. Peters to approve the resolution Sawyer County Exhibit A Airport Property Map. Is there any further discussion? If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Letter C, Mr. Kinsley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. With a building remodel, the electric company that's working out here noticed that they need a little bit more room in their easement to put in some anchors. They're compensating the county with $500 for that. It was approved at the Public Works Committee.
Thank you. Entertain a motion then to approve the Sawyer County Board of Supervisors resolution approving this utility easement. Mr. Duffy.
I so move.
Okay, Mr. Schleter. Motion by Mr. Duffy, second by Mr. Schleter to approve the resolution Sawyer County Board of Supervisors for this utility easement. Is there any further discussion? If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Kinsley? If not, moving on to number 13, Land, Water, Forest Resource Committee Chair Report, Mr. Buckholtz.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Events, Mr. Peterson presented a request for local events, including the Canva Women's Mountain Bike Clinic, the Canva Men's Mountain Bike Clinic, and the Sealy Lions Prefat Mountain Bike Race, and the Squamigan Mountain Bike Festival. The Sawyer County Treasurer's Report is, that's coming up next there too, so I won't talk about that.
Okay.
County Forest, a written report, Mr. Peterson reported that the road bans came on in the middle of March. Sale inspections were on target for the level of the activity. Timber sales and contracts are out for advertisement for 26 tracks for sale, and they are completing trail aid grants applications now. And an update of the carbon tax credit process is anticipated to be available at the May meeting. And then the Tag Alder Beach proposal, Mr. Peterson presented from the Nelson Lake Association and the Resort Association to develop an area off Tag Alder boat landing for an approximate 10,000 square feet. It would financially be supported by the association requesting the project. DNR Forest Report, a written report by Roy Zebrod, reported that the wolf depredation process and white-tailed deer permit quotas. And Jay gave us a report and advised that the tree sale will begin at the end of April, and staff attending several training classes. And the dam operations are in full swing and managing water levels on the county-owned land. Workflow is picking up from the zoning and conservation standpoint. And the Upper Bruni River Dam repair plans that were presented. The drawdown is scheduled to start August 15th. LCO, Mr. Bissonette advised that the LCO focus is currently on enforcement of the trail activity, and they are seeing most are abiding by the trail rules. That ends my report.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Buckholtz. Now we've got some discussion, possible action, sir, on some over-the-counter land sales that were approved at your meeting level, correct?
Yes, the treasurer presented these. Land sales, you know, there's 3 of them, and they're all going to the same client. So at Land and Water, we approved all 3 of them at the same time, and I believe that's what we can do here.
Sure.
Tonight.
Okay, so at this time, then I would entertain a motion to approve the over-the-counter land sales, tax ID 1282, tax ID 1278, tax ID 171.
So
Mr.
moved.
Betcher,
So moved.
motion by Mr. Betcher, second by Mr. Weaver, to approve the 3 over-the-counter land sales, tax ID 1282, Town of Bass Lake 002145 152900, tax ID 1278, Town of Bass Lake 002145 15-2300, and tax ID 171, Town of Bass Lake 002-10324-1800. Is there any further discussion? If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Any questions for Mr. Buckholtz on land water? Mr. Buckholtz, did forestry let us know that we're on track or on budget with our timber sales?
Yes, we're on budget.
Thank you. If nothing else, number 14, Health and Human Services Board Chair Report, Mr. Schleter.
Okay, Health and Human Services Board did meet, sorry.
That's okay.
Health and Human Services Board did meet last Tuesday. We have reports from LCO liaison, lots of activity taking place out there in conjunction with Health and Human Services, Behavioral Health, Child Protective Services, economic support. The only thing out of the ordinary was that Sawyer County Senior Resource Center does report to the Health and Human Services Board. And I want to tell you that the winter site is open and serving the population down there according to GWAR, according to federal and state law. We have not closed the winter site, as some of you may have heard in rumor. We did take action yesterday evening at the Senior Center Board to get out of the lease for the building in winter that we had been using for congregate meals, because with the pandemic, we couldn't have congregate meals. We went into a 3-month period to see if a site manager could be found so that we could use that property properly. And with a cook and a site manager, we advertised a lot, searched high and low, and could not find anybody willing to take either of those positions. The meals are being prepared at the Excellent site, and we do deliver those to winter to a specific pickup spot where people can come and pick up their meals and take them wherever. Of course, we are doing the Meals on Wheels. That has never ended. The pickups never ended. Let's see. I had something else. I'm sorry, it must not have been very important, but basically we are working with Guar. Once we finish the ending of the lease, we will, at Guar is the state agency that oversees the operation of Meals on Wheels programs. GWAR, I guess it's also a band somewhere, but after we no longer have the rental place, Guar wants us to try a restaurant-based delivery system, which would involve finding a restaurant in the winter area willing to work with us on this project. And the people could come to the restaurant and enjoy their congregate meal there, just like they used to at the other place. It could very well turn out to be more expensive for the Senior Resource Center to do that, but Guar is asking us to do approximately a 3-month try and then examine the results and make some decisions then. So I really want to emphasize, we have never shut down or denied service of delivering meals in winter, period. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Slater. Any questions for Health and Human Services Board Chair? All right, moving on then to number 15, Finance Committee Chair Report, Mr. Kinsley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The treasurer gave us a report that income is going down this month compared to like last year where for tax money has been quite high. We still have some Arpa funds, I believe 1.5 or 1.6 funds available yet.
Yes, sir.
Okay. What was the other funds that's coming in soon? Oh, opioid.
Opioid.
Yeah, it's not here yet. So that's information we need to know. We also have letter B, a resolution to carry over funds to Sheriff's Department. It's funds they have left over and they want to use from 2021 to 22. And it was approved at the Finance Committee.
It was, sir. Okay, so at this time, I would entertain a motion to approve the resolution authorizing the carryover funds from the 2021 Sheriff Department budget to the 2022 Sheriff Department budget. Mr. Duffy.
I also make that motion.
Okay, Mr. Buckholtz.
I'll second.
Motion by Mr. Duffy, second by Mr. Buckholtz to approve the resolution authorizing the carryover funds from the Sheriff Department budget. Is there any further discussion? If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Letter C, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Letter C is the Civil Air Patrol came to the Finance Committee and asked for some money, and I believe it was $5,000. They had no, basically because of COVID, they had no income for 2 years, and they lost a lot. And they asked for ARPA funds at the committee. It was approved on the 2-to-1 vote, but I also would like to add, we have to be careful of these ARPA funds because now if we're going to start giving out to smaller groups, doesn't matter. We're going to find ourselves flooded with that groups wanting money. I respect the Civil Air Patrol. I think they do a wonderful job, but I'm not sure that we should be spending money on that. And I've been thinking, in my own opinion, that the ARPA funds that we have left is 1.5 or 1.6, somewhere in that area.
Is that correct, Mr. Teef? You're right, sir.
Thank you. As we know, the second courthouse building, we had to get an extra $2.1 million. And my way of thinking is if we use them ARPA funds toward that, everybody from Sawyer County can benefit from it. Of what the ARPA funds that are left. That's my opinion.
Thank you. Okay, we have a resolution presented in front of us. Mr. Helwig.
I make a motion to approve.
Okay, I have a motion by Mr. Helwig to approve the resolution using ARPA funds to support Civil Air Patrol in the amount of $5,000. Is that correct? Okay, I'm looking for a second. Ms. Hessel.
I'll second it because it was approved at committee level.
Okay. Motion by Mr. Helwig, second by Ms. Hessel to approve the resolution authorizing $5,000 of ARPA funds to the Civil Air Patrol. Is there any further discussion? I
Yes.
got two here, Mr. Buckholtz.
Mr. Chairman, I thought all ARPA funds were now supposed to go through the administration committee, not the finance committee. Am I
Okay,
wrong?
this was presented at finance and discussed at admin. I think there was no vote there because it came from finance approved. There was no, I'll say there's no recommendation from admin. Mr. Betcher.
Yes, as the finance chair pointed out, if we approve this, not that I'm against it, I think Civil Air Patrol is great, but I'm going to personally vote to disapprove this because it will open up the floodgates for every, quilting agency, Girl Scout, every organization out there is now going to try to get their $1,000 here, $10,000 there. Not that we don't want to help people, but I think if we had some sort of priorities, ad hoc committee formed that could prioritize a list of these ARPA funds, and it would be easier to make these decisions.
Thank you, Mr. Betcher. Mr. Schleter.
Thank you. I agree with Mr. Kinsley and Mr. Betcher. This is a very, very slippery slope. You don't want to start going down it because once we do it for one, we are going to be targeted by every organization. That it's just a very slippery slope. Let's not go there.
Mr. Duffy.
The responsibility for the priority has just been bounced around from committee to committee. So I guess going back to Mr. Buckholz, who has it? Who's that's like a hot potato? Is it administration? Is it finance? Is it somebody else or?
This came from finance, sir.
Finance.
Okay, I'll go with Ms. Hessel.
I believe Mr. Duffy's point is that the administrative committee was supposed to make a priorities list. I did bring up the concerns at the finance committee about this being a trickle effect, but the fact is that it was approved at the committee level. And why do we have committees if we do not respect what they say and bring to the table?
Thank you, Mr. Helwig.
My comment is the fact that the ARPA money is for those people that lost money during COVID. It's not necessarily for courthouse. I understand that we're short on money, as far as what we're looking at. But if I'm understand correctly, that's what the ARPA money is for those little businesses that barely made it through. Thank you for your time.
Are you good, Mr. Ruska? Would you like to speak, sir? You go ahead.
Can that money be used as donations?
Mr. Keefe?
I think, I don't know if I can answer that specifically. I believe, we're looking to use it under the revenue recognition pot of money. And I believe what you're restricted by is what the county normally would spend money on towards. And I'm not sure really the donation aspect of that.
Mr. Keefe, would this be an allowable expense for these ARPA funds?
I think I want to defer that. I think we should get an opinion on that.
Okay. No, I can't right now, sir. Okay, is there any other, I got a motion by Mr. Helwig, second by Ms. Hessel to approve the resolution authorizing $5,000 of ARPA funds for the Civil Air Patrol's request. Is there any further discussion?
I have a question.
Mr.
After
Helwig.
Mr. Keefe said that
We're in discussion, sir. Go ahead.
don't, correct?
Yep.
So, you just brought up, you'd like to defer it and get some more information on whether it is even a viable, you can use that
Allowable.
money for that.
Correct.
So what do we do under the circumstances as far as, if we want to put it off? So I would withdraw my motion so it can be
You could.
possibly another motion that we would put it off
You could do that, sir.
until we get more information.
Are you withdrawing your motion then?
I'm withdrawing my motion.
Okay, Ms. Hessel, do you withdraw your second? Well, just on the floor right now, he'd withdraw it and then we'd make another motion to
Right.
postpone.
Yeah.
Yeah, we do,
Oh,
Mr.
we do?
Yep. I think. Mr. Phillips, are you still on?
I am, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, sir. We've got a question for legal counsel regarding use of the ARPA funds.
And so the question is whether the donation to the Civil Air Patrol would be an allowable use under ARPA. Is that the question, as I understand it?
Correct.
And I heard somebody suggest that you were claiming these funds under revenue replacement. Is that right?
Mr. Keefe, correct.
And
Because it's
is
under
the
the $10 million amount.
And the question I have is the Civil Air Patrol's connection to Sawyer County, and I don't know enough about the connection between the Civil Air Patrol and Sawyer County to find out how it is that these funds will be utilized. In other words, what's the difference between the Civil Air Patrol and United Way, for lack of a better way of saying it?
Yeah, I don't know that. Do you know that, Mr. Keefe? Yeah, we don't know that as of yet, Mr. Phillips.
Okay, and the second question, is there any urgency to the $5,000 request? In other words, is this money that needs to be appropriated this evening, or can it wait until next meeting?
He's shaking. It is not time sensitive right now.
And then I would appreciate the opportunity to confer with Mr. Keefe or Mr. Alvarado about the connection with Civil Air Patrol and make sure that we have utilization of the funds in the most appropriate way.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Phillips. Do you have any questions, Ms. Hessel, for him? Oh, okay. So you withdraw your motion, sir?
Yes, and now I'd like to make a motion that we postpone this until the next meeting. We
May
get
come.
more information from our counterparts.
Sounds great. Okay, I got a motion by Mr. Hellwig to postpone until our May meeting. Mr. Buckholtz?
I'll second that.
Okay, and a second by Mr. Buckholtz. Is there any further discussion on the motion to postpone? If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, thank you, Mr. Kinsley. Is there any other questions for the Finance Committee? If not, we'll move on then to Economic Development UW Extension Committee Chair Report. Mr. Duffy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We met on April 11th. Not too much to report. We have no action items, but we did hear from the Fair Board. They're going to sponsor a barn dance as a fundraiser at the fairgrounds on April 11th, and they expect that all of us will be there. Also, we heard from the Extension Department, and they are sponsoring a Parents Forever program at the jail, which is a program that connects mothers incarcerated with their children through reading. Also, the department is conducting a grant writing class, and we hope that we can encourage all the department's heads to send somebody to that class to improve our grant writing efforts. There's got to be a lot of grants out there that we don't apply for, but at least let's learn how to do it. Send somebody there that can catch on to how to do it. The Economic Development named Jesse Wagner Schultz as their acting director. And we heard then both from the Hayward and the Winter Libraries. And that completes our report.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Duffy. Any questions for Mr. Duffy?
Mr. Duffy, what was the date of the barn dance?
June 11th. You want a ticket sent to you directly?
Good question. Mr. Duffy, do we have someone identified to go to that grant writing?
Grant writing class by the Extension Department.
Have we identified anyone to go or?
Anybody can go. But,
Okay.
we don't have a date. But
Okay.
we should take advantage of it. There's all
We
kinds
should.
of grants out
Yep.
there.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Duffy. Okay, moving on then, number 17, personnel policy updates, discussion, possible action. Our interim county administrator, Mr. Keefe, and Madam Clerk, personnel policy manual updates, March of 2022. You want to take this, please?
Yeah, from time to time, it's necessary to review and update our policies that the county has. This one is coming from the personnel handbook. There's several additions made that are highlighted in red in your packets.
specific to timekeeping because we're switching over to electronic timesheets from paper. So we're just kind of updating policies to reflect some of that. There's some other minor little tweaks. There's language for service animals inserted into the policy. So unless there's questions specifically, I'll leave it at that.
Okay, did you want to add anything, Madam Clerk?
I do not.
You're good. Okay, thank you. Okay, so Mr. Peterson.
I just, as I read through that, I don't know, it came to my particular eyes that there were some maybe typographical errors in there that would need to be.
Yeah, we've discussed that.
Okay.
We're aware of those.
Okay. All right, then. That was, so then at this time I'll entertain a motion that we approve the personnel policy manual updates for March of 2022 as presented by Mr. Keefe. Mr. Duffy? Okay, motion by Mr. Duffy, second by Mr. Schluter to approve the personnel policy manual updates. Is there any further discussion? If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Keefe. Number 18, County Administrators Report. This might be your last one.
That is my last one. And that leads right into Andy. Andy Alvarado is the new county administrator starting Monday. So looking forward to that.
Wonderful.
Brief Muni code update. I think at the last meeting, I indicated it might be coming in April. Looks like it's going to be coming in May. We're anticipated to see the draft now at the end of this month. I did inquire into, there was a question about the zoning code and if that was going to be included in the new book. The answer is it is, but it's as an addendum. So it's just there for the public to see the code, but it has no authority beyond that. It's just for information really as an addendum in the book. And Jay seemed to be happy with that. He understood that. So those comments there. Opioid settlement. We are participating in some Zoom meetings, I think towards the end of next week. Hopefully we'll get some information on the timing and hopefully the amounts, what we're going to see there. Finance director, there is a finance director who has accepted the position. We're working on dates right now, so I can't really identify who the person is at this point, but there is a plan in place. ARPA money, that's been a discussion tonight. I just did receive today notice that they're starting to update for the second tranche. Last year, we got our first tranche or our first payment, I think it was on May 19th. And you're supposed to get it within 12 months or just after 12 months. So we should, within about a month's time, be seeing next second tranche of ARPA money, which is for our county going to be about 1.6 million. As far as the building goes, I don't have a lot at this time to update. The utilities, XL Energy should be starting soon with some of their changes. They're going to be making the relocations. It is impacting Myron Construction's schedule a little bit. They're getting a little bit delayed, but there are some other areas that they will be starting to work around the utility relocation. Again, I don't have a date on when they're going to start, but we are discussing with them whether or not and how, if we do choose to have a groundbreaking ceremony. So probably mid-May, we're looking to put together some kind of groundbreaking ceremony. And there's been several considerations made that perhaps the entire board would be part of something like that. So that more information should be coming on that. So that's what I got.
Okay, any questions, Mr. Hallwig?
Oh, of course I have a question. Easy one, no. You know, when we started doing all this before, we had plans and plans and plans. Will we see a plan as to the floor plans and stuff? I don't know if you remember that, but like every month we got new plans.
Well, we can certainly ask them to present some kind of overview plans. I know there's some very in-depth plans that don't mean anything to me, but we can certainly, I think, get some layout drawings for you. I think they're out there. I think they've been presented to the committee, but
Thank you, sir.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Hawley. Mr. Keefe, at one of your meetings, I don't know when you were at finance with us or was admin, you mentioned that once we wrapped up 21 and looking at 22's budget, that you identified a couple surpluses. Is that correct? Or a large surplus? Can you explain that a little bit, please?
sure. So we're in the process of closing out the 2021 budget. And at the last finance committee meeting, I presented a summary of the general fund surplus at the end of 2021. At this point, it's unaudited. The auditors haven't been in yet to go through the books, but it's projecting that our surplus for 2021 general fund is going to be approximately $3 million, largely attributable to increase in sales tax revenues, increase in stumpage revenues. There was some COVID funds we received. Expenditures were probably a little bit less than what we had budgeted still because of the COVID outbreak. People weren't yet traveling to conferences and things like that. Staffing, we've had some delays in when a position opens up, and the timing between refilling it is taking a little longer in some cases. So that budgetarily, that helps your budget. So, and then the human services budget,
Right.
still projecting a deficit at this time, but the deficit is under $200,000. A year ago, the deficit was $750,000. So budgetarily, that's a great improvement. It's much better than we were anticipating. You've heard us talk a lot lately about out-of-county placements and the impacts they're going to have on the budget. We still incurred the out-of-county placements in the human services budget. But again, because of timing on staff replacements, and there was a lot of COVID money brought into public health last year, it did help the budget overall for 2021. So that was a positive. The highway budget, we're still working through, so I'm not ready yet to present numbers on that yet.
That's great. Great news. Mr. Buckholtz.
Mr. Keefe, can that $3 million deficit, or not deficit, but surplus, can that be used for the courthouse? Or no?
Well, it can, because you still have that $2 million gap to do something with. It's an option. It's probably not an option I would recommend, but it's, going forward, it's the administrator and the board's decision how to address that. One of the things that when Tom and I were planning and considering was, we know with those out-of-county placements, we know that those are still going to be significant costs for the county. We were looking to put some kind of fund balance designation on some of that excess to use for future out-of-placement deficits that will probably likely occur. So.
Yeah, well, just my thought on it was that, it's anything that we could do on this new courthouse is to take some of the burden off the taxpayers. If we got all this extra money and it's taxpayer money, I could see that would be a good place to use it.
Yeah, and you want to look at your overall fund balance position. Where are you in relation to where policy says you should be? And I think we're in the range of what our policy says we should be for undesignated fund balance. But overall, when you look at what other counties around us are doing and what percentages they're at, we're still a little bit low compared to some of our surrounding counties. I think when we had our bond rating, that was presented that, yeah, you're within your ranges, but, consider the future fund balance that you have and look for ways to strengthen it. So it was somewhat of a concern of theirs. Yeah.
So then you mentioned, Mr. Keefe, that part of the surplus is due to an increased sales tax that we received in 21. What do you expect for 2022?
Well, I hope, worst case, I hope it maintains the same level we got in 2021. I think what made 2021 strong for sales taxes, That's when online sales tax became taxable and counties started receiving that. I think that had a large impact on the sales tax for last year. Again, I hope we would at least maintain. We did not budget to the extent that we received revenue, trying to protect the budget a little bit. So if the economy or sales tax for some reason goes down, we didn't budget sales tax at the highest level possible. The first month sales tax came in, it was holding strong. The second month, it is dipping a little bit from a year ago, but you know, maybe the summer will be stronger. Who knows? It's hard to predict at this time.
Anything else for Mr. Keefe? Mr. Duffy?
No, not Mr. Keefe, but I was going to ask the question, Mr. Chairman. The lady who spoke about the building there in Draper, Loretta, and artifacts on the Lac building, who knows about that? What is that? What building there is she talking about? And who has the key? And whose district is that in?
Is
Do
that the
you know
winter?
what she's talking?
Mr. Peters, you're aware of that building?
Yes.
Okay,
So who has the key? What? You want to check into that? Okay.
all right.
Okay.
I have one more question for Mr. Keefe, considering everybody. What do we expect, these carbon credits? What is the money they're talking there?
Probably would be best. Somebody on the committee maybe knows the numbers better than I do. I vaguely remember from the presentation I saw a month or two ago, they're talking maybe $1 million a year for 10 years or something like that. Is that?
Like that, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it was about 13 million, I think, projected over the next 10 years, but I think that we need to maybe slow down and not be so hasty on that decision, in my opinion. It needs to go through Land Forest Water Resources Committee.
Great idea. Mr. Schluter?
Senior Resource Center has the key to that building that she was referring to. And we will go in there and take out the equipment that we own, the records that are ours, clean the place up like any good renter would do after moving out. And that'll be the end of that.
Okay, thank you. Anything else for Mr. Keefe and the county administrator's report? Okay, if not, then we'll go conferences, reports, any other matters for discussion only. Mr. Betcher.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I'd just like to quickly address some of the irregularities and numerous policy violations from Tuesday's election for chair and vice chair, namely Rule 3 in our own county board supervisor policy and procedure manual. I'd like to request to get on the agenda for May a re-election of the chair and vice chair. And I want to point out that this is absolutely not personal. I think you're doing a fine job, Mr. Chairman, and I'm sure Mr. Buckholtz will do a fine job as vice chair. And I'd also like to add, this is not about me at all. In fact, if we do hold another election and I am in fact nominated, I will decline. I just feel like we need to right the wrong that has been done. And by holding another election, it will restore the integrity and due process of following the proper protocol, procedures, and policies. I think we owe this to not only the new members and the rest of the board, but the community as a whole. Thank you.
Any other matters, Mr. Howick?
Mr. Butcher, could you explain, I wasn't at the meeting you and of course, what was the wrong that was wronged? Not good. Yeah.
Mr. Chair, am I allowed to answer?
Well, we're in discussion only.
Right, I didn't know if I was allowed to answer another supervisor directly, so I'll talk to the chair. I mean, I have 5 or 6, that just kind of stood out. One is that at the beginning of the meeting, Mr. Schuman is no longer the chair. His term had expired, so he should not conduct the meeting as chair, which could cause undue influence, especially on some of the new supervisors. Rule 3 says that you need to have a majority vote of the members entitled to a seat, not the members present. So we have 15 duly elected members to this body. Therefore, you need a majority of 15, which is 8. we only had 13 here, so the vote was 7-6 for both chair and vice chair. So that is in violation. None of the nominees, 2 for chair, 3 for vice chair, were offered their 3 minutes to speak, which is again, rule 3, it says right in there. So that was another, direct violation. It says voting will continue until a majority is reached for all nominees. So we had 3 nominees for vice chair, so we should have continued to revote until a majority was reached for all 3 nominees, not with some sort of, we did kind of like a primary, a little mini primary. And it was, it was not ran in a professional manner, in my opinion. And our mission statement says, we'll provide responsible leadership, and we did not display that, in my opinion, 48 hours ago.
Thank you. Any other matters for discussion? Mr. Schlegel?
Yeah, I respect Mr. Betcher's pointing this out to us, and I am equally concerned. I don't want a recount so that I win, and that's, no, I do not want that. But I don't want this hanging over the county board. So you've made the request. Is it automatically going to be on the agenda, or do we have to make a motion for
Well,
it
it
on
would
the
be-
agenda?
It's not on tonight's agenda, but there would be, if it's presented by 2 supervisors, we could put it on the agenda and then vote to have it discussed.
At
Like
the
any
next-
others, yes.
Yeah, okay, well then I'll join Mr. Betcher and request that we do that. Again, I don't want your job. I'm sure you're gonna do a fine job. But let's make sure we're doing things right, especially, it wasn't even TJ's fault. He was called at the last minute. Tom Hoff was going to be present to do the election. His wife had an emergency, medical emergency. He had to dash off. TJ got called in. We need to fix it.
Okay. Anything else for discussion only?
Yes.
Mr. Buckholtz?
Being what Mr. Betcher's talking about and Mr. Schleter, and as being on, as Board of Supervisors, I would like to make sure we get this in order to have it proper. And I'm for that, so. But anyway, I want to thank everybody at the board.
Ms. Hessel?
I just want to make sure that you advise with legal counsel, and also during a contentious, like we had tonight with the zoning, it would have been proper for you to bring that to our attention that legal was on, so we could have asked questions for legal.
All right.
Always have legal on it.
Any other matters for discussion only?
But do the new board members know that? No, they do not.
But you didn't say you board member.
Okay, anything else for discussion only? If not, we're adjourned. Thank you all.
Yes, we do.
Oh.